giving you very, very practical, on-the-ground advice. I hope that everybody has found it sort of very useful. Thank you again, Rimjim, for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rimjim and Anurag, for that conversation. You got some really good nuggets here. I mean, I think Rimjim's point, if you could exit on the other side, and please get a picture taken before you do that. That will serve a great memento. I think you got some great advice in partnering when you enter a foreign land. This is very relevant to this room because about 60% of you in the pre-boot camp survey told us that you are building for the world. So some excellent go-to-market advice that you got from somebody who has done it. Now, some of you, one person asked me that what is the background hum here? Why are other people talking in this room? Well, that's by design. There are these stalls where there would be some conversations going on. It's similar to having a tanpura at the back when there's classical music going on. Only thing we have to do is people at the back, just keep it a little soft so the tanpura doesn't overpower the lead artist. But with that, let's go to the next spotlight. We're going to hear from Dr. Beena Rai. She's going to tell us about AI-powered product development platform. Welcome, Beena. Oh, sorry. I have skipped. We're going to hear from Dr. Kanika Singaroha. She's going to tell us about AI-validated 3D bioprinted disease models. Welcome, Dr. Kanika. Let's welcome her with a round of applause, please.
A very warm and cordial welcome to everyone here. Today in this hall, we have everyone, my contemporaries, hustlers, the ones who've inspired me and also the ones whom we might inspire. This is Dr. Kanika Singaroha. I'm the founder and the CEO of Cellverse Private Limited. At Cellverse, we are developing a technology platform. It's a deep medtech company wherein every step of this technology has a potential to be commercialized. This is an outcome of 11 years of my education, which is very rare in these days. It's a deep tech thing, and as we've just heard from the panel just before me, that a real technology, and if you really want to be an AI startup out of the AI bubble, you need to have patience. You need to develop the technology. We make bioprinted disease models for the pharmaceutical industry, and also for the cosmetic industry, so that they can test their products on the live human skins and other tissues, and they do not have to do it on the animals. It's high time when science speaks for science, and that's where Cellverse emerges. We make digital twins of human diseases, which are then converted into a code that can be read by a mechanical machine like a bioprinter, and then we integrate biology into it, and we bioprint disease models. This is what we are doing. I'll keep it extremely short and crisp. Why am I here today? I'm here today to make a point that yes, India has reached a position where academia, industry, and also the investor fraternity have come to a ground where a very conventional academic people like me can come forward, have an entity, and do something that makes an impact. And I think which long back the Tatas have already done. The way remains the same, jargons keep changing. Thank you.
Please exit on the other side. Please get a picture taken. All right, well, think about that story. The word patience has come up a few times so far, because the whole idea of deep tech, doing AI, at one level, AI is fast moving. At another level, it's going to need a lot more capital than we have thrown at startups. it's going to need a lot more patience. Think about Dr. Kanika's idea to get something like this out of the lab into the land is a long, patient journey. And I think it's going to take a lot of patience from the policy maker also, because we are going to see these ideas which are going to change the world. With that, well, first of all, let me ask you, how's everybody doing? Still going on? Good, good, very good, very good. In between, if I see you drooping a bit, then we will run a quiz, all right? But I think you are all doing well so far. So, what's that? The panelists? Oh, I see. The next panel is still to come. So, I mean, or everybody. So let me say a bit more about what. Let's see who is in this room here. How many people here? There was a conversation just now about academia, industry, government. How many people here are from academia in this room? Okay, so there are academics. How about industry? Okay, excellent. What about the government? Great. Only one hand? Government? Oh my goodness. What about, well, we heard from Anurag just now. What about the impact or the civil the impact sector? Some hands there. Are there people from other sectors here? Anybody other than these four that they would like to categorize? Okay. What about, we said that the 6 sectors that are represented here. Healthcare, people working on healthcare. Okay. How about agriculture? Any people from agriculture? I know Dr. Mathur was here just a moment ago. He is agriculture. What about climate? People working on climate? Okay. How about energy? Okay, nobody from energy, I see. Okay, education? Okay, lots of people from education. So, well, that's the mix we have in front of us. I'm going to ask us a question. Any idea which job segments are most exposed to AI, automation? Any thoughts? Coders? Okay. Any other thoughts? Customer care. Okay. Any other thoughts? Writers. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts? Design. Oh my God! Wow. Because I think wouldn't one think that the design is kind of in a way some human aesthetic understanding plus some generation of creative ideas. There's one very interesting area of work saying, what does sort of a classic design mean? You know, when you look at something and you say, oh my God, this is a classic design. What does it mean? Will a machine ever know it? What about any other ideas? Who else is going to be exposed to a machine-driven displacement? Okay. Medicos may be next. Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Well, I think, you know, if you look at the International Labour Organization's work, they classify jobs into 8 different employment categories. And then in each category, you have subcategories of the different job titles. And what you see is, you know, things that are extremely rule-based, right? Say clerical jobs, etc., are going to be the first. They show are the most exposed. Of course, programmers are the extremely rule-based category, and so on. Let's see. Let's do a time check. How are we doing here on on the next conversation. Okay. He is, okay. Do we have Ravindra Misra in this room? Okay, Ravindra Misra is here. All right. So, is that the only person? Okay, very good. Okay, let's move on to the next segment. Thanks for being with us. Consider the following question, that when it comes to AI-led startups, is the idea of impact different? Like, are we thinking of impact differently because this is AI, or is it similar? Is it still to do with human values and so on? This is something that we're going to talk about in the next panel, from lab to lives, turning innovations into impact. And for that, I am going to invite Ms. Meghna Bal, Director of ESYA Center, to the stage. She will be the moderator. And then I'm going to invite three eminent panelists, Anurag Agarwal, Dean of Biosciences and Health Research, and Head of Koita Center for Digital Health at the Ashoka University, Hemendra Mathur, Venture Partner for the Bharat Innovation Fund, and Ravindra Misra, Chief Product Officer of the OPL Innovate. Please take it away, Meghna. And let's welcome them with a big round of applause.
So, first of all, big hand to the organizers, to Anna ma'am and her team for putting on this stellar event. We've been talking a lot about the practical realities of AI, and this panel seeks to dig a little deeper there. We're going to look at funding, scale, impact, all the triad of things that are central to both success and longevity when it comes to operating in this sector. Of course, we're going to try to get a little granular and look at sector-specific considerations when we're talking about this technology. So, as an opening frame, many AI startups don't fail because the technology doesn't work. They fail in the space between prototype and adoption, what's often called the valley of death. Is anyone familiar with the valley of death over here? What it means? 1, 2 people, all right. The valley of death is the critical early phase where startups, often deep tech or biotech, many of whom have presented here today, face high cash burn and negative cash flow before generating significant revenue. So it's basically a gap in their ability to generate revenue and funding that eats up a lot of startups. And according to the Harvard Business Review, it claims 90% of new ventures, this valley of death. So we're going to try to unpack what the valley of death looks like for AI startups in health, agriculture, and fintech, and more importantly, how to cross it. Given that many of you here are building AI ventures, I'm going to push our panelists to be very specific about what breaks and what actually works. And in that context, I'd like to bring up and kind of engage you guys a little more. And if I could call on even the young tinkerpreneurs in the stalls to participate in this next part of our discussion. We're going to pull up a Mentimeter. Is it up? Not yet. Can we get the Mentimeter up, please? All right. So how this works is you just scan the QR code with your phone, and then you choose one of the choices. So where do you think your AI startup is most vulnerable? And then we'll have the speakers respond to your suggestions. So please take some time. Give you about 2-3 minutes to get there. Are we done? Just put your hand up if you're done. Not yet. One person. We are kind of getting there, building the right model, finding early customers, regulatory barriers, Scaling, distribution, monetization. All right, I think we'll stop there, but you can keep giving your feedback, and we're going to start the discussion. So, given these responses here, and then of course they're not all encompassing, no multiple choice question is, what does the value of death look like in your sector? Anurag, I'll start with you, and what is unique about it?
Thank you so much for the question. Pleasure to be here. And I can see you guys already know what the right answers are. So building the right model, I think, is the first most important step in the value of death in healthcare. And you can take a variety of examples. Typically, people will choose something in health, could be an X-ray for tuberculosis, could be X-ray for COVID-19, doesn't really matter. And everybody, based on existing data, trains their model, thinks it works. But there's deep skepticism amongst the people on the user side, because they continuously see models come to market having worked well on training data sets, but actually when they work on real, on-the-ground data sets, they don't work. And that's expected actually, technically from AI. If the type of patient on whom you propose to use the AI model was not there in the part of training, it usually will fail. And unfortunately, most young startups have no access to real data of real patients in the sector they want to apply it, so their models don't work. The second important part, I think, is a combination of the next two things: who uses it and regulatory. Many people build their models for complicated diagnosis, a cancer, a disease. These things will only be done by doctors. That is the regulatory framework of law. A non-doctor cannot make the diagnosis. The question one has to ask is, why should a doctor want to use my model and why should they pay for it? If doctors who are required to establish any diagnosis are not invested in the workflow that you are thinking of for using your product, it will die. You could, of course, bypass that and go to consumer, but then you cannot do complicated things that transform treatment because that's simply not allowed. Then you are in a different sector. So understanding who your user is, why should they pull money out of their wallet and give it to you, I think is the second other part, and aligning it with the regulatory framework of the nation is critical. I won't dwell on that right now. I think we'll have rounds, so I'll stop here for now.
Certainly, thank you. Hemendra, I'll come to you next. You know, some of the things that Anurag touched upon resonate, I think, in your sector as well, which is agriculture. So we'd just like to dig a little deeper beyond, you know, what we're seeing on the screen in terms of restrictions. Of course, access to data is a big one. What are the kind of issues when it comes to scale for startups in your sector?
Right. Thanks, Meghna, and thanks, Niti Ayog, for this wonderful opportunity. Yeah, I think it's a very valid question to me, especially in a sector like agriculture. The valley of death is essentially between a successful pilot and farmer adoption. You know, I think that is where I see 80-90% mortality, which is quite significant. And if I have to drill down what are the reasons for that, I think the first and foremost, as probably most of you would know, that Indian agriculture is extremely hyper-local, extremely seasonal, and very, very risk-averse. The average holding of an Indian farmer is about 1 hectare, huh? Just imagine. Right? So unless you build models which are very contextual and curated to that particular farm and farmer, it's not going to work. So that's point number one. Point number two, especially in a sector like agriculture, the AI models are getting built on public data, or the ones who are going to be built in the future also will be on DPIs and public data, right? Who's building it? Mostly agri-tech startups and these big tech companies who have got into it. Who's taking these models to the farmers? I think there's an army of village level entrepreneurs, grassroots organizations, state government bodies who want to take these solutions to the farmer. Huh? I call that trust layer, right? And the one using it is of course the farmer. So though it may sound controversial to say, I would say don't build for the farmer. Build for the people who are trusted by the farmer. So it's not a completely digital model, I call it phygital. You know, farmers need to see a person, a face, they need to hear someone, and that's where these models start scaling. Last but not the least, I think for AI in agriculture and probably for any AI model, don't chase perfection. I always say perfection is the enemy of good. Right? If you are trying to get your model 100% right, accurate, I don't think that approach is going to work. Personally, I believe 70-80% accuracy of your model is good enough to start testing the waters, right? And then start co-developing, and probably you'll get there. So I'll stop here.
Thank you. Yeah, farmer trust is essential, I think, for any kind of transactional interaction. We actually did a study on AI agri-tech startups, and the biggest problem they raised, of course, was access to data, but then, of course, how to prove their models. So benchmarking standards became a very important consideration there. Ravindra, I'm going to come to you next. You know, we've seen some recent news actually about big AI pickup in the finance sector with Bajaj Finance relying on models for loan dispersal. So just want to understand for you again, what does the value of death mean when it comes to fintech AI startups?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. See, we have to see from that angle that suppose you try to learn swimming in a very small pond or a very small swimming pool, and then you think that you have learned everything. Then suppose you are thrown into a sea, but you don't know about the sea, the winds, the gust, the velocity. You have never imagined that. You don't have vision for that. So while swimming, if you don't have the vision where you are finally going to get into the market, your customers, your regulator, their rules, you can build a model. There is no issue about that. You have the capability of building a model, but if you don't know about the regulatory part, if you don't know about your customers, where are the target customer, who are you going to target, what are the issues you are going to face when you come to the real world, I think you will not be able to survive in that. So first and foremost, when you are going to scale up, you have to understand that scaling up will come with real world challenges. We also as a company now, when we do a lot of UATs, so these are all internal database UATs, very small data is available. But the moment we go to the real world, when the real customers come, when the real banks come, then we face the real problems. Some customer will come, different problem. Then we'll have to again retrain our model or redevelop our model. So because we have not looked into those problems, because the data set to that level is not available to us. So I think the biggest challenge here is that the data set which is available to me is non-AI data set basically. It's unstructured data set. So on which I cannot test my model actually. So in the real world, that is the biggest problem I face. And in the financial sector, another biggest problem is finding of a proper talent. So talent is available. You have a talent in IT, you have a talent in AI also. But the talent which has financial ability also, both the things in a one person is very difficult to find. So that is another challenge. Then the moment you come into a real world, you find a lot of regulations coming into picture. And the AI world or the digital world is like that. Almost every month you have the changing regulation. You have every day coming of new laws, stricter laws. So because of that, the institutions which is going to use AI from financial point of view, they are also afraid that when the next law will change, what impact it will have on the customer. Customer is also afraid because of the cyber crimes and all. So these are all challenges which one comes into the real world faces, which he is not able to see it when he was developing the model.
Great points there, and I'm glad you kind of honed in on regulation because it seemed that our audience didn't think it was too much of an issue, but particularly in fintech where it's such a closely overseen sector, I think it would be a concern. And of course, the point about uncertainty, which is, I think, coterminous with regulation, unfortunately, more and more, particularly in the digital space, where there is seems to be limited guidance of policy or limited in terms of long-term vision. What to do. So now we're just going to move to our next theme, and maybe we can come back to some of the themes we've touched upon today. So if we can pull up another Mentimeter, the second one. Is it up? The next one. Thank you. So same thing again, you've already, I think, logged in, or I don't know if you have to do it again. So if you want to just give some responses here, what matters most for AI to scale? What do you think is significant or salient when it comes to scale for AI? Okay, you can see that the discussion of the panel has informed at least one response. See them here. Just give it a minute or so. Some kind of trend. Okay, so trust, I'm seeing product market fit, data access. Yeah, seems extremely informed by our discussion right now. Good to know. Yeah. People are listening. That's good. That's always heartening. So I think I'm going to keep letting you guys respond. Please keep bringing your responses in. But we're going to start with the next round of questions. So since we're talking about scale, when we think about it, I mean, we've already kind of moved on from the success of a prototype or a pilot because we understand that once it enters the real world, it's a whole new reality, right? It's a whole different context, and often startups fail to grapple with that reality effectively. But we do live in a country that is extremely populous. We do have a massive demographic dividend, and as a consequence of that, scale tends to be something that we achieve more easily than other countries. I mean, I've had many discussions with people from other countries where they're like, how does India scale? How do your startups achieve such high numbers? But what is meaningful scale when it comes to AI in your sector? So again, Anurag, I'm going to start with you. How do you define scale, meaningful scale in your sector, and what do you think the barriers to scale are?
I think scale in the health sector primarily is based on user base, especially in the personal wellness sector, which is the least regulated and the most amenable to expansion, where number of people using what your product is probably the most meaningful.
If category. I could just get you to kind of expand on what you mean by personal wellness.
So for example, you will see lots of apps today using AI to help you with your diet, your weight, your fitness and things like this. These are relatively easier sectors because a doctor does not have to be involved in the middle. Regulatory framework is less. The fundamental assumption is that if you give bad advice, a normal person is capable of recognizing it and not following it, which makes it easier to scale in terms of unit metrics of the number of people who use yours. Revenues can be small, but it works out. When you come to the more formal health sector, I think it is the enterprise level solutions, helping manage large organizations, manage electronic health records, access data easily, voice to digital data, make convenience and efficiencies of workflows better, that large enterprises are interested in, that allows people to scale better. The most difficult category, but potentially the most scalable category, is where you help the government do something it could not do before for lack of manpower. This would require you to create a perfect product market fit where the consumer is the government, meeting a large societal need. You have to meet every benchmark, trust, regulation, and so on. And then you have to fit yourself into the public procurement policy. This, to my mind, becomes the real hardest mile. Those who will cross this will have almost infinite scale in a country of 1 billion people, with the government providing a huge chunk of healthcare services.
Certainly. I mean, there are many initiatives around the world. One good example is the Small Business Innovation Research Initiative in the US, which basically was developed to ensure startups access to procurement, because they would kind of get blocked out. And I want to actually ask you another question, follow-up question on that. So when you talk about access to procurement, yes, definitely that is a great proving ground and an important one for going to market for startups. But how do they overcome things like L1 and other kinds of structural restrictions that may make it hard for them to enter that market?
That's a great question. In fact, now I'll answer it in two parts. For example, when the India AI mission is now holding competitions, it is guaranteeing procurement for the winners of those competitions. So that is the research way of victory. The second is to meet trust benchmarks. In health, for AI, L1 will not operate. Meeting or exceeding performance benchmarks will be, and thinking of the health technology assessment framework, where you save money. So for example, when ICMR was looking at chest X-ray solutions for tuberculosis, it conducted a full HT assessment on everybody who applied. Only 2 vendors turned out to be net money saving to the government because they improved the processes. Those 2 got automatically certified that anybody in India could easily procure any one of them. So if you do a full HTA along with economic benefit, then L1 no longer becomes the relevant way.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Hemendra, I'm going to come to you. Same question. How do you define meaningful scale in agriculture? And what do you think the barriers to scale are? And just a third part, now that we've had this discussion about procurement, what does procurement look like for AI startups in agriculture?
Yeah. Thanks, Meghna. I think when it comes to agriculture and food, scale is humongous. It's 500 million smallholder farmers across the world. Out of that, 120 or 150 million farmers in India itself. And of course, 7-8 billion consumers and millions of intermediaries. So there's absolutely, sky's the limit when you talk about scale in agriculture. Coming to barriers, I think multiple barriers, I would say. The first and foremost, I talked about the trust deficit. I think, for example, there are like hundreds of weather advisory apps for farmers, right? First of all, farmers don't download apps, right? But what they trust if the data is coming from the government. So they love IMD. They love some large companies whose names are familiar. So how do you build that trust layer with the farmer is the first and foremost challenge and opportunity. Second, I would say distribution. I think this is one of the sector where partnerships are critical for scale. Partnership with state governments, Krishi Vigyan Kendras, agriculture universities, FPOs, SHGs, blah, blah, blah. Unless you crack that, it's hard to scale. And that's where I've seen a lot of agri-tech startups which have tried to build their proprietary data, proprietary distribution, didn't really scale beyond a few districts or few states, right? The third point, I think, which was also there in the slide, unit economics. This is one of the sectors where the margins are super thin, across the value chain. There are like 10, 15 intermediaries earning 1, 2, 3% kind of margins. So how do you make that sharing of economics fair to all the stakeholders? I think that is so critical because if unit economics break at one layer, it's not going to scale. And last but not the least, which is a big barrier, is weak data infrastructure, right? If you don't feed the right data, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And I think that's where India opportunity lies to me. For example, whatever data is available on the web, I'm sure Chat GPTs and Clouds of the world have already scrapped it. But what about the data that we have in the country lying with hundreds of agriculture universities, ICR institutions, right? There's so much of research available which is very contextualized to Indian farmers. Likewise, the data coming from 7,000 mandis, 150 million farms, about 2 lakh weather stations, satellite imagery. So I think we have a wealth of proprietary, India proprietary data which we haven't really harnessed. And you have to really make a mark in global AI. To me, agriculture is right up there. How do we, I think the challenge is how do we make that data collection affordable? How do we open source that data? Already AgriStack is in the work, which a lot of people may know, with 70 million farmer IDs already issued. But I think the real beauty of this AgriStack will come up when we start open sourcing it for private sector, for building multiple use cases.
Thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is first about making the data that we have available or accessible, and then thinking about what else can be done. And data collection and processing and cleaning is extremely expensive, so the government is the best entity to do that. Ravindra, coming to you, same question. What is meaningful scale in fintech? What does procurement look like? And what do you think the barriers are to both scale and procurement?
See, the scaling up in fintech is very unique actually, because if you look at the fintech or the sector which we serve, has multiple segments. You can serve payment stream also. You can go to deposit. You can go lending. You can do whatever. I mean, there are multiple segments. So the person who has built some solution for it, or some startup is there, then they have to be very clear about their path, where they are going to go there, the kind of talent which is available, the transparency in their system, because ultimately it is the trust versus the hype. I mean, hype you have created by creating a model or some solution or some startup and app, but ultimately when it is going to reach to the final customer, not the bank, not the NBFC, not any other institution, but to the customer, that trust has to be there, which the end customer has on the manual systems. So it has to be converted to the AI model which you are building. So first thing is that you have to be very sure about where the data is coming, whether the data is pure, whether the data is structured, because once the data has been acted upon by AI or used by AI, it should not give biased results. It should give very objective results, and it should create trust among the customers.
Do benchmarks exist currently to gauge that? In terms
What?
of, do bias benchmarks exist currently in terms of gauging that?
It should not happen actually. Once you have created a model, it should be very objective model. It should not throw you biased results to for the customer. So it will create not only issues for the customer, but it will create issues for the banks also, institutions also. So first thing is that while scaling up, you have to keep these things in your mind, that it has to be very, very, the data has to be very structured data, AI ready data, so that the results come up, non-biased results come up, and customer has trust on those results.
Just one more question. You know, banking is not, if we're thinking about it in a B2B context, banking is not a homogeneous sector. I mean, none of your sectors are really. So when you're thinking about, again, a B2B AI fintech business, you're wanting to integrate into a bank systems, how do you approach different banks? So cooperative banks have very different considerations from something like an
That's the
SBI.
reason. That's why I said not only the banking system itself, you have NBFCs, you have cooperative banks, you have rural banks, you have commercial banks, you have private banks. So there are hundreds of banks or systems, institutions. You have government lending institutions like SIDBI is there. So there are a lot of categories of financial institutions. So when you create a product and you want to scale it up, you have to be very sure for what you want to do. You cannot just go in the market and then you try to scale up and then you fail in that model.
I've also noticed in fintech particularly that a lot of technology uptake is driven by regulation. So particularly smaller banks like cooperative ones, they say that, you know, we basically hire startups on the back of a cybersecurity regulation or something like that. And there's like maybe
yes. Because see, regulators' job is that the consumer or the last mile customer should not, I told you, trust versus hype. So that trust will come when the regulator, suppose regulator says when you develop any product, any app, you have to give to the customer key fact statement, where every single thing which you are going to offer to the customer is recorded, and there is a APR, which is the overall cost which you are going to charge to the customer. So this is the regulator's job, that any digital application should have all the transparency available for the customer.
Thank you for that. We're going to come to the last question. We don't have a Mentimeter here. If we have time at the end, we might put it up. But now we want to talk about impact. You know, we've spoken about funding, we've spoken about scale. What does impact look like in your sector, Anurag? And I'd like for you to kind of delve into the different, because again, we're not dealing with a homogeneous landscape here, delve into the different kinds of use cases and the different kinds of contexts where impact can be meaningful or gauged.
I think in health, impact is clear. When you enable people to have either easier or better access to healthcare, you have made impact. I'll give a very small example of how this can be done specifically in the health sector. In a country like India, where people typically don't even understand the disease they have, why they take the medications they take, no doctor has ever explained to them why anything is done to them. If you just look at, say, I'm just using a company as an example, as EkaCare. One of the reasons EkaCare was able to scale very fast, they recognize the problem. Everybody sits on bunch of data, tests. They have no idea what the test mean. They have no access of a person of understanding who will explain it to them. And there are enough open source foundation models available that can do a reasonable job of putting things together and explaining them. So you give people value services when they share their data with you, you make their appointment booking easier, you make them easier to comprehend. And if you increase quality, I'll honestly tell you, one of my friends wanted me to explain a very complicated MRI to them. I'm not an MRI person normally. I also used it for a second to help me understand, and then of course I can filter it. The second level of impact is, I think, what you would call really improving the quality of services to the point you make it better than it was before. You can see it in genomic services. You can see it in corporate level, high level models. You can diagnose diseases that you could not before. You can take people with cancer and plan their radiotherapy that you couldn't before. That's impact at the treatment level. And lastly, I would say impact is when you change outcomes. Very few examples of that in health AI yet, but I would say outcomes are changing by new drugs being discovered by the use of AI in the health sector. Drugs are either being designed better or made faster. People have turned a turnaround of new antibodies to within 6 months from years. We've already seen AI designed antibiotics that are killing drug resistant MDR organisms that couldn't be done before. This is research. But I think research is also impact. So I think the biggest impact in the end will come from solving previously unsolvable problems, then efficiencies, then enablement.
Thank you. I just want to double down a little bit and just follow up with one more question. You know, AI, of course, it enhances our ability, in your case, you know, to improve either value-added services, which is extremely important because all hospitals in this country are capacity constrained. But there are also some paradoxes that emerge, right? So on the one hand, it may enhance our ability to diagnose diseases quicker, but on the other hand, there's an autonomy risk that emanates from that if there aren't safeguards put in place. So just want to understand what kind of safeguards should a founder be wary of or consider when they're creating their solution?
No, I think this is very important. AI can make mistakes, will make mistakes, and doctors will suffer from AI fatigue. Recently, my wife's a radiologist who uses AI tools all the time from a company. Sunita is here. She was pointing out that every third case on her list is turning red because some finding is there or the other. And sooner or later, you are going to make mistakes where AI picked up on something and you ignored it. And then you will make the other type of error, so you became a rubber stamp to the AI, just automating your stamp. Either direction is bad. People who design these solutions need to think a little bit more about the users who will use this and perhaps look at grades in which they would present their findings. And I think it's an active conversation all over the place, including at the company where my wife is in.
Thank you so much. And maybe a consideration for standard of care, not only being applied to doctors, but to those making these solutions available in the health sector, specifically in medical context. Hemendra, on to you. Same question. what is impact in your sector? Again, it would be helpful to have some use cases, some insights from different elements or segments within the agricultural sector. And how do we deal with some of the paradoxes? You know, I think an accuracy one is one, but are there any other interesting paradoxes that emerge where on the one hand, capability is enhanced, but on the other hand, there is some risky outcome or there is potential for risk in terms of, you know, adverse outcomes?
Thanks. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question. And I often say in agriculture, the farm yield, which is one of the key impact parameters, to me is more of a vanity. The farm incomes, the income predictability, income assurance to farmer is more of a sanity. But the fact is, making farm income resilient is the reality. You know, so that is the sort of framework with which we can see the impact. And you're right. I think when it comes to agriculture, measuring impact has multiple dimensions. And that's where I want to bring this notion that a lot of AI models, when you think about agriculture, is thought from a perspective of direct to farmer, right? But actually, in the reality, it is more like an embedded AI model for agriculture, for it to create impact. So let's say improving farm incomes. I think you'll be surprised that farmers sell their products when the prices are lowest, and they sell to the mandi which is nearest, right? 15 days to sell, and 30 kilometers is where the buyer is. So even as simple as price discovery, market discovery, buyer discovery is going to create a huge impact. You know, how do you create that models? My AI should be able to tell what are the prices prevailing in multiple mandis. My AI should be able to figure out the logistics service providers. My AI should be able to, you know, put an auction dashboard where buyers are bidding for you, right? Quality is saying, you'll be surprised, go to any mandi in the country, the quality assessment continue to be very subjective. You know, traders take the commodity on their palm and they'll just throw it open in the air and say, hey, this is A, B, C quality. This is how the quality assessment is happening. Why should farmer work hard to produce better quality, right? So I think, and thankfully there are like hundreds of startups who build some interesting AI tools basis spectrometry and some other technologies which give very fair assessment on physical grades, chemical grades, biochemical grades. So can we make that AI available in these places of aggregation, be it warehouse, be it mandis? Credit, again, an interesting data point. The 60-70% of lending continue to be through informal sources, and the cost of lending coming to a fintech opportunity is 3 to 5% per month. Who in the world is going to make money on an interest rate which is upwards of 30-40% a year? Forget the poor Indian farmer, right? How do you make this credit accessible, institutional credit accessible through cooperatives, through RRBs, through multiple PSU and private sector banks at a rate which is reasonable, 7, 8, 9, 10%. And that's where credit scoring models comes into picture. Thankfully, we are capturing so much data from satellite imagery that you can build a credit score for each and every farm in the country. And that can go as an underwriting tool to the banks, and they can build some interesting model to make that credit available. Likewise, inputs. In India, we use about $50-60 billion worth of agricultural inputs every year. And farmer uses inputs basis gut feel. And that's why we see so much of urea, so much of DAP getting into a soil and finally getting into a stomach in some ways. So how to optimize use of agricultural inputs? And that can only happen when you run some interesting AI algorithms on the soil health, on the plant health, on the hyperlocal weather parameters. You can actually cut down the input cost by 30-40%. So just put all this together and you will see a huge impact happening at the farm level. But I think the whole ecosystem has to come together to create this impact. I don't think a startup or an AI tech company can do it. We need far more collaborative ecosystem for this.
Yeah, I'm going to prod you a little more just on that point because, you know, we've seen a lot of digital interventions. You spoke about market pricing, for instance, or making market pricing available from mandis. We had the Enam initiative. which struggled to get off the ground primarily because, it wasn't really attuned to the ground reality of mandis. There were many, many issues that emanated. How do we overcome those to enable AI? Because ultimately you do need some kind of digital interface to be collecting data in order for it to be fed into a model.
Absolutely great question. And I must clear this myth. I think a lot of people sitting in big cities think that farmers is not digitally literate. The amount of social media farmer is using today, be it YouTube, be it WhatsApp, be it Instagram, Facebook, is humongous. And not for seeing some reels or something, for actual information which can help him in the farming or the animal husbandry. So first and foremost, farmers are digitally literate. I think second very important component here is building a very farmer-friendly UI UX, right? And I have seen the use of voice, use of vernacular, use of video is far more powerful than a chat. So I think that is, to me, is more like a design challenge, and I'm sure some of the AI startups in the room can solve for it. How do you make that interface so friendly? Third click for the farmer is going to run away. He's going to run away on the third click. All you have is first click and maybe second click. So if you can solve in 30 seconds, you're good.
Okay. We're almost at the end. Oh, 5 more minutes. Great. Good to know. Okay. So I think we can fit in a last Mentimeter as well. Ravindra, coming to you. Again, same question. What does impact look like in fintech? What are the different kinds of use cases we're seeing across different segments? And how do you deal with the paradox of enhanced capability but enhanced risk as well when it comes to outcomes?
See the impact, I will give one word only, huge, huge impact. You have to remember, you have to go back to the manual days when the banking used to happen today also, but there was a time when the borrower or the person or the applicant will go to the bank for 6 months, 5 months. He will go with his balance sheet, with his other statements, GST, tax statements, personal statements. And banker will say, come tomorrow, I don't have time, this is there, that is there. Then again one customer will come, he will say, he is my chacha ka ladka, isko to aaj hi kar dete hain, ye mere neighbor hai. So he'll do it. So that was a very subjectivity involved in lending decisions or any other decisions. So the first and foremost thing is that once the AI or the digital era has come, that subjectivity is gone now. The entire data is sourced from the SSOT itself, the single source of truth, and entire data is analyzed based on algorithm. The risk ratings are generated using that. So customer is not interacting in a subjective manner with the bankers or any institution. He is being judged on certain parameters which were impossible to actually judge by the human mind. So one thing is that, and everything is very objective. And now I'll tell you why it is huge. Earlier, the decisioning in the lending used to take almost like 60 days to 90 days. It is an average. It could have gone to 120 days. It could be in 30 days also. But now what we have done in certain banks is the decisioning has come down to 40 minutes, 45 minutes. So in 40-45 minutes, a customer comes to know whether the loan is to be done or to be rejected, basically. So it is a huge change from customer's point of view. Now you were saying the impact basically on the bank, the impact is that the customer verification is very objective. The loans are not becoming NPAs, which used to be in the past. Second, bank can lower the cost, like he said. So when the cost of operation comes down, the cost of lending will also come down. Then you come to the customer. Customer is very, very, service is improved because the customer feels that immediately a decision has been made. I am not lingering around the bank. So I think in the lending perspective or the AI's involvement in the banking has created a huge impact on all the stakeholders.
You mentioned risky customers and NPAs. I want to kind of double down on that or delve into that. There are certain incentives, particularly with loan dispersal when you're a financial institution, and they do not necessarily reconcile with welfare, or enhancing access to finance. So, one of the big reasons why loan dispersal through fintechs kind of took off is that someone who may have been a risky customer when it came to an old school institutional bank may have had a easier access to credit when it came to an NBFC. How does AI impact that paradigm? Does it carry forward the legacy of incentives, the incentives of legacy institutions, or does it create a balance between, enhancing access to credit versus being risk averse and safeguarding the interests of the bank?
When we say digitalization or in the banking industry or the fintech, it is always the democratization of the credit. The credit has to reach to each and everybody who is eligible for that. Earlier what was happening, the person who was more maybe powerful or maybe more who can get the loan out of muscle power or something, he used to get the loan. Now it is democratization is there. Even the lowest strata of the person is getting the loan from the bank. The power is such that there are certain portals the government has created with our help where anybody can apply the loan. There is no distinction that who can apply, who cannot apply.
Wonderful.
So I think once the AI has come into picture, the loan or the reach to the people has gone up, farther up than it used to be in the legacy systems.
Yeah, please come in.
One very quick comment: from innovation to impact requires a strategy. It was wonderful to see the RBI strategy for AI in banking. And I think we need more of these beyond a general AI strategy for the nation. I am pleased to say the Health Minister will be launching the strategy for AI in health for India in the summit.
Oh, that's
hopefully
wonderful
tomorrow.
to hear. Wonderful
So keep an eye out for
Look
it.
forward to
Thank
that.
you.
Look forward to that. I think we still have 2-3 minutes. So I think we can bring the last Mentimeter up, if it's there. Last Mentimeter? There's only 2? Okay, fine. So, closing remarks from our speakers. Yeah, closing remarks from our speakers.
No, I think I made mine. We need strategies that are sector specific to make sure we deliver the kind of impact that is possible. And a very important part of it is going to be producing the people who will deliver the impact.
I always say agriculture is a heaven for data scientists. Almost everything you can think of is variable. And climate is making it even more unpredictable, right? All of us are witness and victims of climate change, right? So I think we are sitting on a huge AI opportunity, which I personally think India is the best place to solve for. So I would look to some startups who can create a solution not just for Indian farmers, but for the farmers globally. I think that could be our contribution to the world of AI.
I think the last word is that let us not look at AI as some kind of a plug-in. It has to be a holistic, you have to look at the AI as a holistic solution. It is an infrastructure, it is an ecosystem. So you can't build something and then plug in the digital system. You have to look at the entire picture for AI. And for the fintech part, I will say that the regulation first, the marketing later.
Thank you so much. I think, yes, context is extremely important, and what we've learned here today, I mean, I've learned a lot, but is that the ivory tower problem is not something that is restricted to academia or think tanks, which is the space I work in, but startups as well. There is a need for greater industry research linkage, industry university linkage, to understand what the realities are of a sector before you start delving into it, or when you're building solutions, particularly in engineering colleges. And on that note, thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you so much to the organizers for having us. And thank you so much to the audience for your participation. And I'll close there. Thank you.
And what a great panel. Thank you so much for the great wisdom. I have to tell the crowd that, if you are in any of these three sectors, these are some of the finest people you can meet in our nation. So please get hold of them, talk to them. There was a lot of wisdom that came about in this conversation. But the few points that I really loved, I will share with you. I think Anurag said that, doctors are important to have in the conversation. I talk to healthcare startups all over the world, and I'm often shocked to find that many of them have no doctor in their team or have never talked to a doctor. This is not a good idea if you do a healthcare startup, so that's something to remember. I think Hemendra said that India is going to be hyper-local in agriculture. This is such a great wisdom. This is a beautiful thing to build on. It's a strength and a challenge. And then finally, Ravindra Misra said something very important, that when you pilot, remember that the swimming pool is not the ocean. So build for the world. Okay, well, there's one quick announcement for the speakers. If your picture was taken more than 30 minutes ago, then you should have a frame, have it framed at the registration desk. So feel free to pick it up. Your pictures are at the registration desk if they were taken more than 30 minutes ago. With that, let's get into the next spotlight. We have Dr. Beena Rai, who is here to tell us about AI-powered product development platform. Welcome, Beena.
Good morning, and first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about our startup, which is pretty young, started a year and a half back, Better Labs. And what we are trying to do, in fact, the previous panel talked about that if you are building something, especially the physical products, keep in mind it should be designed by compliance. Keep compliance in the mind. And also, product market fit we talked about. So what we are creating is actually the whole ecosystem, or if you say a kind of quote unquote operating system, which any young founder or a new founder wants to create, say, product can come on this playground, and everything you need is available to you. Because if you typically look at how physical products are designed, there are many stakeholders involved. You may have a very good idea. For example, we heard that there is a big wellness and healthcare sector growing, and you are talking about nutraceuticals, magnesium gummies, sleep gummies, so on and so forth. You want to build a magnesium gummy which doesn't allow to grogginess in the morning. You have a great idea. You want to build it. But you are not a food scientist. How will you do it? You will go to consultants. You will have to fetch for laboratories. You have to do experimentation. And you are a bootstrap startup. You have nothing at your hand. There comes Better Labs. So, and if you are a FMCG, you have to keep churning out products because you have to keep bringing new products if you are in skincare, cosmetics, pet care, you name it. So it's a very complex web. Of course, it costs money, it costs time, and sometimes both are not at your hand because your competition is there, it's global market, you miss the bus. And in India, you may be in tier 2, tier 3 cities, you don't have such kind of infrastructure with you, but yet, good news is that India is building. We are moving towards 2047, and I'm sure all of you would have noticed a lot of such products in the market. And many, many new startups coming and building the products. But there is a big gap. If you look at the other side, there is a mismatch because you don't have access to this infrastructure, quote unquote, research and development phase of the life of the product. You don't have big labs, you don't have big scientists, how do you do it? And that's what then, what you are going to do is, I'll just skip this, because we have less time. better labs come into picture, because in my 30 years of research career, I was with the largest IT company, leading research for 30 years, and came with that experience. And what we are doing is basically creating modular labs. It's not one monolithic, again, giant, that you have to pay crores to get subscription. We have modular labs. If you want to try out, you can try just the market fit, you can try out the compliance, you may have a product, you may have a label. Even if you're making a food product, label itself should be compliant. And then we have special lab which you just go, pay for that, only do come out. And of course, if you are FMCG, we have full infrastructure, you have your own data, enterprise data, we have enterprise model as well. We started with food and nutraceuticals wellness products, but the platform is very, very, you can say horizontal. It can be sort of customized to any physical products. In fact, we have tested for even toys. So we are really building infrastructure for Make in India, where you can design, right from design, from compliance to manufacturing. We also have the whole network of manufacturers, suppliers. If you are making some very, you say, Ayurveda-based product, you need particular ingredient, we have ingredient suppliers. Heart of it is, because see, it's not ChatGPT or LLM. Heart of it is actually the real intelligence model, which we have team of scientists. Me, myself is a scientist, but we have food chemists, food scientists. We have built the knowledge engine. And that's the one which drives this whole seamless integration of this whole value chain of product making. So right now, as I mentioned, we are looking at food products and nutraceuticals and wellness products because we are very young, we just started. We opened the platform in September last year, and it was beta users. We had 150 people, different organizations coming and using it. And in February, first week, in fact, we have now launched the real platform. We have paid users now. Till date, we are bootstrapped. Nobody has paid any money to us. We are self-sufficient. We have run away for one more year without making any funding. So we learned the lesson that you cannot scale pretty fast. We know that. And we want to make it something which is foundationally very strong, scientifically driven. We know there is an AI sort of buzz, and you can write that hype, but we don't want to write that hype. We want to build something which is scientifically correct, and it really solves the real world problem. And so, as I mentioned, who can use it? As I mentioned, right from, say, first-time entrepreneur to even large corporates involved in the business of making physical products can use the platform. That's the vision. And since we are talking about Global AI Impact Summit, of course, we say this is the way of democratizing innovation. Basically, how do you shorten the period of research and development, which was largely in large corporates, and they used to invest millions of dollars to come up with product in the market. But now with help of AI and technology, you can probably shorten the time cycle and make it available to everybody. So you need not be a scientist trained PhD postdoc, yet you can have access to same kind of scientific, you can say, rigor and build your products. So actually the platform is live, and we have also, because we want to sort of market through word of mouth as well. So we give some free credits to every user. You can log in. You can explore different labs. Right now, 4 or 5 labs are there. And you can use it. If you like it, of course, then you can subscribe for whatever you want to use it for. I do have a demo. If we have time, it's a video. We can show that. Do we have video? Yeah. So it is just showing, for example, it's very simple interface. You can write that, okay, I want to make, it is showing you. So these are the labs which are active right now. Since I talked about food products, so we have formulation lab, we have regulatory compliance. Currently only Indian regulatory data is there, but we are expanding to European, any other geography. So you just want to check the concept, you want to create a full concept dossier, including the market fit, including the costing, including the regulation, everything you can do it. For example, you are saying that I want to make sleep gummy, and it will then ask certain questions, because it's the intelligence engine which we have put at the back end. It understands if you are making the gummy, what all you will need. So it guides you. And then, of course, it tells you. It is also talking about claims. For example, if you say it's for sleep, you have to say that, okay, how much of the melatonin I should put, how much of the ashwagandha I should put. If I exceed that, then your product is not going to, in fact, pass in the market. So right from the beginning, it points you to, and it will, at the end of it, it will get a concept dossier. If you have your own lab, you take that dossier, that's good enough to just go and experiment the product. You can make it in the lab. But we are also creating infrastructure. We do have our partners. We have actual labs where we can help also you to make the product physically in case of food products. We also have the set of manufacturers where you can get the batch made, tested as well. And this whole ecosystem, research is also important. So we also have like partnerships with the research labs, like NIFTIM. We also have Ayurvedic institutes working with us. We have doctors, clinicians. So we have a full ecosystem, and that's where we feel that we bring kind of a, uniqueness, where we give you a kind of a, scientifically robust platform or infrastructure to build the products. To start with food and wellness products, but we are expanding to other industries as well. So I think I can stop. People can go and look at it because it's available. And I'll be happy to converse. I'll be around whole day. So if there are people who want to look at the platform, I'll be happy to show you, talk about more. Thank you so much.
Dr. Rai, I love this idea absolutely, because at multiple levels, because fundamentally we do know that we, world over, there are so many diseases that don't get addressed because the cost of research and developing drugs and everything is so high. And partly it's high because it's integrated and it's underutilized. And I think this is a beautiful idea to undo that situation. So congratulations. Let's turn to investment. How many of you in this room, let me do a show of hands here. Just for a moment, if you can look up from your phones. How many of you have ever spoken to an investor for an idea? Okay. And many of you will probably speak to an investor soon. And I wish you luck on getting to that moment soon. But if you have, whether you have or you haven't, you will come to a realization that there is this experience when you talk to the investor. You talk to them and they ask you questions, and of course you do the best that you can to answer those questions, and then you go home, you go to sleep, and at night you wake up and you start thinking about how you could have answered that question better. And then in the morning you realize that, oh, this is how people grow and learn and go on and get better and better and better, right? So I think being able to speak to investors is a very important segment of this story, without which there will be no story. And so let's invite this conversation that's titled Capital, Control, and Clarity, How to Turn Investor Questions into Yeses. It's a conversation between Yashodhara Bajoria, founder of C Experts, and Jairaj Bharat Patel, AVP of Kalari Capital. Let's give them a big round and warmly welcome them.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaishnav. And completely second what you said about Dr. Rai's session, because I think the fact that she's not only spoke about how difficult it is to crack this very difficult market, but even from a capital point of view, the minute she used the word modular, that just makes it very comfortable for us to also look at giving money, and we feel that, you know, it's a part of the larger puzzle. So listen, I've been seeing all of you here, and at least I've been warmed up. But let's do a session of warming up, right? Jairaj and I discussed this. So can I request all of you to stand up, please? And let's stretch. Come on, you can do better. Who doesn't like stretching after all? Wake yourselves up right before lunch. Turn around. Just don't bang anybody on your right and left. We don't want any injuries here. I didn't see an ambulance standing, so let's not risk that. Thank you very much. Please be seated. I hope that kind of woke you up. So just some house rules about what we are going to be doing this session, and what is this session about and what it is not. This is not a motivational talk, so please don't expect one. It's not a complaint about how funding does not work. It's also not generic funding advice. But what it is, it's a practical lens on how investors evaluate AI companies. It's a way to link your stage, metrics, and technology to question in what investors really ask and what they're really, really asking beneath that question. And a set of specific moves you can apply in your next fundraise. Founders in this room are at very different stage, and I got that sense in the first half of this day today, and I was just filling Jairaj in. From early pilots to scaling companies, the questions you should be asked, the questions you should accept being asked also. I think there is that decision that you need to take. Depend a lot on where you are. So can we have the first Mentimeter, please? Where are you now? And please, please, please use that phone to scan that QR code and answer that question. Where are you now? Is it option A at pre-revenue? Option B at early revenue? Is it option C that you're growing? Is it option D that you're scaling? Or you're not a founder, you're just on the capital or ecosystem side, or as I can see, you're some students there. So you can even, I can ask the students to also take their phones out and participate if they have to. And while you're doing this entire exercise, and I can see some answers coming in, but there's a lot more that you can do. I see that a lot of the people, oh my God, a lot of the people are actually at pre-revenue stage. So that's interesting, that's great, because it gives us perspective on how to cater for this conversation. And the pre-revenue tool and the applied, especially for the applied vertical and SaaS, or whether you're at a late stage AI platform, is just so that you know what could be the right questions for you to ask. So great, as the numbers keep coming in, I can see, you know, at least from this question, I think, Jairaj, it's fair to assume that most of the audience is pre-revenue.
Correct.
So just a brief reality check so that all of us know where we are as of right now. AI is now infrastructure. It's not a magic word anymore. Patterns, bias do exist, but this is not the center of this session, and I have everyone important. I have the permission to not make it about how women are biased and all of that, because I never faced that. And this is a unique window, and the reason why I say that is because you have access to models, infra, data tools that did not exist a few years ago. So strong technology plus clear evidence gives you more leverage than you've ever had before. So keep this in mind when you're listening through this conversation, and there is a small framework we've created which is called FRAME. It's very loose. This is the lens we're going to adopt. It's F for flow, which means where does the money actually flow in this market? Is there a clear willingness for somebody to pay you money? What's the risk? That's R. A for access. How did the investor actually reach you? Where were you found? M, what is the market, which is where in the AI stack are you playing, and what will be your margin in that place there? Last but not the least is E from frame, which is environment. So jumping right into our segment of questions, Jairaj, there are 3 hard truths about AI fundraising. Many AI companies have some revenue, fewer have a funding story that makes sense to institutional capital. Jairaj, my question to you is, when you see an AI company with early revenue, what tells you it's a scalable product or a business versus essentially a service or a project business?
No, thanks, Yashodhara. And I think this was very helpful to see that, because most of the people in this room, at least from a founder perspective, come in that very early revenue or early product stages. So what I think for us, it may not even be, most of the companies we typically invest in from an AI perspective or the portfolio we've built in the last 2-3 years, these are all companies that probably don't even have revenue at this point of time, right? But what we look for, especially when we're trying to evaluate market and go-to-market strategies, how they're going to scale, whether it's in India or elsewhere, what we want to look for is two things. Repeatability. How repeatable are their sales when they go after different customers, and the degree of customization that is required in their product or their platform. Because if the customization is extremely high, irrespective of the customer that they cater to, that means the sales cycle will of course inevitably take a lot more longer time, and then the company will fail to establish a structured portfolio of products that it can build more momentum over, especially sales momentum. So we would look at it as very early. You want these companies to focus on, we build a great product in a particular segment, and then there is enough and push at the same time to scale that in that particular segment.
So Jairaj, tell me, have you ever experienced a time where a company has come to you and the technology is incredible, but the business is not? Give us an example of something like that.
So yeah, very recently, I think just about last week, I was speaking to one founder from the US, and they're basically trying to experiment with what they're calling small language numeric models. So their thesis is, in a lot of different quantitative market use cases, they want to go beyond the generic text-based LLMs and build this on data sets that can have significantly more accuracy across a wide variety of use cases. And this is a founder who has really spent about 10-15 years in the Valley. They've really, have a very, very deep understanding of what they're building. But at the same time, they've spent about 4 years on this problem statement. And there is nothing to discredit the amount of work that goes in building something, that foundational. But they're very far away from reaching the market at a point or having those early customers where they can scale this as a company, scale this with revenue. And therefore, it's what you said. It may be a fantastic tech product, but if it's not ready to hit some of these levers, then it is not fundable yet.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of people get excited when they sort of, crack at a sort of a unit level, but just making it into business is a completely different thing. Every segment, and all of you sitting here, we're going to have this one round of quiz in the end, and whoever scores the maximum marks is going to get a crazy gift. And if all of you believed me, then you're listening to me, which is what I wanted to do. So no, after every segment, what we are going to do is have a quick segment of what you should do and what you should don't. So Jairaj, correct me if I'm wrong, you should state clearly which layer of the AI stack you are in. You should show a simple path from your project, make it repeatable, and how that process is going to only improve margins with less customization. Link 12 to 18 month capital use very, very clearly from a de-risking perspective. What you must not do, and I think if you were me, I would be taking notes right now. What you must not do is present a service-heavy business as a product company without data to support standardization. Second, pitch horizontal AI for everyone at early stage. Treat, and the third thing is very important, treat some revenue as enough. So definitely don't do any of these three things. Moving on very quickly to the second truth of today, which is data beats bias. I think Jairaj, very, very gently touching on the fact that data is agnostic of any kind of bias. So when a founder does not fit your usual platform, but has very strong metrics, and when I say platform, you can understand what kind of biases I'm talking about, but has very strong metrics, what convinces you the fastest? And honestly, tell me a little bit about your fit. Who is your fit?
It's a very interesting question that you ask. So I'll take the latter part of it first and probably then connect it with, what really convinces us fast. I mean, from a fit perspective, our job is to look at only three things, especially early stage startups. It's to look at product market teams, right? And try to make sense of this in whatever way, whether you want to call that a math, science, art, it's all, a mix of all of these in some or the other proportion, right? So for us, though, from a structure perspective, let's say we look at AI and we have an AI practice at the firm. We will have different verticals within AI that we want to look at on the application layer, on the infra layer, and what we have is what we call sub-themes, right? To look at founders building in different domains. And for all of these, we will of course do our best when we are building our own thesis to try to come up with a particular archetype or a founder type where I feel, hey, in this particular segment, I feel that someone with a more tech-first approach is likely to win and build a more enduring company. And I might arrive at some segments where I feel that I need a founder who's going to be great at enterprise sales or running product sales. Now, we may have some understanding and, let's say call it a bullet list of this is what we're looking for in founders on a sub-theme level, but this is never followed by the book, right? So to say that fit is evolving each time we speak to founders, and we learn the most directly from founders who are on the ground, who are doing their job, right? To the first part of your question, what really convinces us fast is the clarity and conviction that founders will have, right? If, like I said, it doesn't matter if I get to see personally, I get to see that you have converted revenue, you have converted customers in a segment, and you're showing growth at 50% month on month, quarter on quarter. To me, that comes later, and I don't, specifically attribute a lot of weightage to that. What I'm looking for is, does the founder have a clear pulse of where they're operating, who they're competing with, and with the opportunity that they see, what kind of a land grab they're going to do in that segment, right? And their strategy. That clarity, that focus is what, of course, convinces me and therefore pushes me into go into diligence and then go into more kind of a mode where I'm going to be brainstorming more with the founder.
So Jairaj, I agree with everything that you're saying, but I'm going to repeat it in a different way. If a woman in her last trimester walks into your office asking you for money, you're going to judge her based on everything else you said.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say this because, of course, Kalari, our general partner, our founder is Vani Kola. She's a female herself. At the same time, we have part of our fund that is allocated specifically to female founders, what we call CXXO by Kalari, that is dedicated specifically to promote and invest in female founders, right? So we, like I said, in 5 years of having been at this role, and irrespective of if I take myself out of the role and speak for the ecosystem also, I've never had a discussion with any other investor where they're evaluating a team and thinking whether it's a male or a female. What we are looking for is clarity on the market, on what they're going to build.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I would urge everyone to believe that, because when we were having some initial discussions, it came up that, now the differentiator, I think there's something Dr. Vaishnav said, that the differentiator at the level 1 will be technology. What are you doing faster, better, cheaper? And nobody's kind of looking at anything else. And that, and honestly, that conversation now is losing steam, if I might say so. So what are the do's and don'ts of this segment? Do come with 2 or 3 non-negotiable data charts you can explain clearly. Retention, unit economics, model impact or usage. When asked a defensive question, answer first with a current data point, then with a forward-looking plan. Third, use your product and customer behavior as your introduction, especially if networks are limited. And what you must not do, rely on narrative alone, especially if you suspect a pattern bias. Spend time debating the fairness of the question in the room. It always fails, let me tell you. Hide weak or noisy metrics. Explain what you're doing to improve them. Not everything has to look pretty, but there can be a justifiable explanation on why they are the base today. I'm not going to go through, or maybe Jairaj you could, because in a poll, predominantly everybody here is in early stage. Can you just tell us the various stages of funding very quickly?
So I think, yeah, and thanks for bringing this up, Yashodhara, because I often feel as much, I think, with founders being busy with building and, with technology or trying to acquire your next customer, you have far too many things on your plate. So you probably don't, unless you spent a lot of time doing it, like I saw a lot of hands go up when the question was asked about how many of you have spoken to investors, you probably don't have a clear sense of what is the structure or the investor landscape, right? And it's very important to establish that, because that will make a difference in terms of the feedback you get to hear. So in a very simple structure, I can tell you at the earliest of stages, what you have is an angel or a pre-seed, right? Which is where you may be at the stage where most of the people in this room are, that you are currently either very early revenue or still figuring out what your product is, what your MVP is, what your go-to-market strategy is going to be. Then what you have is a seed stage where either the product risk is complete, that you're in the final leg of completing your product, have an alpha or a beta ready, have done some prototyping, and therefore have a better understanding of the markets you're going to go after. Again, early revenue, and then you move into seed. This jump from seed to Series A would happen typically when you have figured out a lot of these structures that are in place. You have a product, you have a base team in place, you have established markets, and the capital that you need really is to now accelerate, right? You just want to hit the pedal. And Series B, C, D, so on and so forth really come at different maturities, but not to go into that. But these three stages are very important. Now, each fund, just talking about India, each fund will have different check sizes, right, in terms of what they do. But why it's important to understand what your investor wants, irrespective of what is written on their website, and therefore some of this is obviously information you will only collect when you have a conversation, is if you're at this early product stage where you really haven't cracked that, and you go and speak to a Series A investor, they're going to tell you the metrics you have aren't enough. You're not cut out. You're probably going to go home thinking, oh, I need to scale my revenue before I can get an investor to speak to me. But really, that's not, because you've spoken to an investor who will, who comes in at that stage. Really, what you want to do is target more investors at the stage that you are in, who are coming in, who may not put a revenue milestone on you, but will tell you, can you finish this particular product milestone? Can you get to a beta? Can you get to a alpha? Hey, I'm going to introduce 5 different potential customers to you. So they come in and add that kind of a value at, in those stages. So it's very important to understand bucket, and of course, not to say that if you're at this stage, speaking to a Series A investor does not matter, because you can speak to them and work in reverse, knowing what they're going to want from you the moment you reach there. You're probably going to be a year or 2 away, right? But it's very important to have this clear understanding of these structures.
No, I think it's very important, and if anybody has any questions, please park them, because Jairaj would be happy to take that, later on. But honestly, Jairaj, if I was to ask you if an AI founder, also define an AI founder, right? Because we're confused about that. Comes up and tells you that here's my 18 to 24 month plan. How do you check whether they've properly factored in compute costs? I don't think, like Dr. Vaishnav asked how many people are here from energy, and I didn't see a single hand go up. And that was concerning for me, because that's just concerning for everybody who knows that we're doing an AI Impacts Summit here, and there's not a single person here who's from energy, right? We discussed this. So how do you know that they factor in compute costs, data access, hiring, getting people in that space is so difficult. How do you know that they factor all of that in?
So again, I'm going to quickly bucket this into two types of founder archetypes that I've come across, right? The first founder archetype is they've built the whole model by themselves. Now, whether or not they have the full financial understanding of it, they've factored in a lot of these direct assumptions. They may not be portrayed directly, but they're still in place. The second founder archetype is people who have not built, let's say, have not had the exposure to build some financial understanding early in their careers, and therefore are leveraging, an investment banker or other catalyst to help them through this process. In both of these processes, what is extremely important is that you are up to the numbers. It doesn't matter if someone has helped you build those or not, but you really need to have a clear understanding of how this business evolves, what are your core cost centers, what are your core revenue centers. If I was to answer this question from the angle, how do I make sure they factored this in? Of course, the more time I spend, I will provide my input on what they can do, or as a fund, every investor would do that. Before it's not just that we will look at the numbers and say, okay, we're going to invest or not, but it's a more group-based activity. But at the same time, very recently, I had the opportunity to speak to a founder. It's a team based in Bangalore. They're working with D2C brands in India, and what they've pitched is they have a small device that, their competitor has a device. What they've done is they built an app that sits on a retailer employee on the floor. Let's say you have a Nike store, and the person working at the Nike store will have that app in his mobile phone. The moment he strikes a conversation with a customer, he'll start transcribing. And therefore, the whole premise is to give these large brands on-ground data on customer conversations, which is something they've never had before. So it's a beautiful solution which solves a lot of problems. There's no doubts about whether brands will pay for this kind of information, but it's what you said. I had a discussion with the founders. It's a seamless app that they've built, but the amount of compute cost that goes into constantly transcribing every conversation from morning to evening, all of a sudden you're looking at a company that has a beautiful product, but the gross margins are absolutely not close to what a software business needs to have. And therefore then they need to rethink that model itself. Hey, do we start this at random points? Would this be some conversations? Would this capture some part of the conversation? But it's a very different model mix, and you can't do this once you've already sold to about 100 customers and realize that my margin is low. At that point, you won't be able to make that change. So it's very important to kind of get that perspective. But yeah, we do it as a group activity to figure that out.
Yeah, I think the takeaway there would be to dig deep into this very dynamic changing landscape of what this cost looks like, and also map that 18. So basically the do's would be to present a clear 18 to 24 month de-risking plan, just catering into all these kind of dynamic and unpredictable cost variables that will might kind of hit you from the behind when you're not looking. Second is decide and stay whether you are optimizing for fastest possible scale or disciplined unit economics first growth. And third would be seek investors whose portfolios align with yours. The don't would be overpromise release cadence. I think that's very important. Don't overpromise a release cadence of your product. Ignore your own bandwidth and commitments. Don't overstretch yourselves. There is a life beyond work. Take capital because it's available. Just don't take any capital. Trust me, he's being very sweet to you right now, but they can be a hawk.
No,
otherwise.
Nothing like that. Please don't build that impression.
Okay, no, I'm joking. Can we have our second Mentimeter up, please? Which question hurts you the most? And please answer this because really, is it how big can this get? Is it when why you and your team? Like how many of you get asked this question? Why you and your team? Show me the numbers. What's the plan for the next 18 months? Who else believes in this? Come on. Can we have this? Can't be 50-50 I think the entire room should be voting for this. Wow. Jairaj, I'm so sorry to put you through this.
No, I'm glad to.
Yeah, I can see a lot of information. Show me the numbers. Wow, a lot of people actually voting for show me the numbers. And why does it hurt? I mean, why is it so hard? Jairaj, explain to me. Is it because they are underprepared? Who can tell them what to be prepared for with numbers?
No, I think, and this is something we were discussing prior right? I think numbers, we are at a stage where, at least the early stage investing we do as a firm, where, like I said, if you're a pre-revenue or an early revenue company, you really don't have a lot of numbers. At that point of time, what we would want is you really understand your cost centers and the nature of how they will evolve as you scale. But that clarity on numbers really comes from clarity on your business, right? And I think that is absolutely critical to build and instill from day one onwards, right? Of course, each nature of business, like everyone in this room probably, I can assume that you're wanting to do something in software or AI. But if you're building a D2C kind of a company, or you're building a B2B commerce platform, there's a wide range of the things you need to be tracking and wary of, right? But it can get challenging, especially if you're talking about domains or solutions where there is nothing really that you have something to take inspiration from or learn from. You've built something truly novel. At that point of time, yeah, it may be slightly harder, but it's not impossible, right? And it's very important to have.
Yeah, I think the numbers haven't changed, because I think for a lot of people what hurts them the most is show me the numbers, right? But I guess that's the right question to ask. I also feel that there is clarity that is lacking in the area of signals, So when somebody walks in, say there's a founder that's walked in, if somebody tells you that, okay, they take some big names of their customers, or pilots or some other accelerators that have supported them, what actually does name throwing help, or does it change the conviction that they have? How should they deal with the fact that the last slide is always about lots of big logos that these guys funded me and this is the amount of money I raised? Sorry.
You can draw this to a close slowly.
Yes, so please draw this to the close.
No, I think, for us, like I said, it's clarity, and we gauge from the founders. So it's never a quantitative bet, it's more a qualitative bet. And I would say, urge everyone in the room that wants to raise money, whether from a VC or otherwise, to make it a relational job. You're basically picking who you're going to be working with rather than who's financing your company, right? So I think it's very, very crucial for you to have also built that trust with them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jairaj. I don't know about anybody else, but I have a lot of takeaways, and at least people are clapping after this session, so that's enough. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jairaj and Yashodhara. I think, well, you have to believe this. You got a lot of wisdom from this conversation, and thank you for masterfully navigating it, Yashodhara. And please get a good picture taken. We are going to go to one last conversation before we break for lunch. I do have some announcements for lunch, so I'll make them right after this conversation. But for the next spotlight, let's invite Sonal Khanna, who will be telling us about Secure Blink Threats Spy. Sonal, welcome to the stage. And let's welcome her with a big round.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's truly inspiring to see so many innovative startups presenting here today. So we have seen powerful AI solutions transforming industries, solving real problems, and shaping the future. But alongside this rapid innovation, there is a very important reality. So every application, every new LLM or AI model or any of the digital platform opens a new entry points for the attackers. So as innovation grows, the need for cybersecurity grows with it. Because no matter how powerful your innovation is, a new single vulnerability can break the user trust, can disrupt the operations, and impact growth. And this is exactly the challenge we are solving at SecureBlink. I am Sonal Khanna, co-founder of SecureBlink, and we have built ThreatSpy to help organizations innovate securely. Today, applications and APIs power banking, healthcare, education, and AI platforms. But security has not kept up with this speed. So most organizations test their applications and APIs occasionally, while the attackers are scanning continuously. So this creates a dangerous visibility gap where the vulnerabilities are exposed while without the organization